Hi, John. How are you today?
Hey, Elliot.
So I saw on Monday that the new acting comptroller of the currency, Brian Brooks, posted a letter addressed to the president of the United States Conference of Mayors and their CEO and executive director. And the subject line was considering the impact of economic shutdown on America's banks. So did you see that?
I did see that. And while it's not AML direct, it's definitely related because of a couple things in the letter. And what I'd say first is we hope everybody's being safe throughout all the things that are obviously going on, especially in many of America's cities. But the timing of this letter was really, in my view, very strange. So it was posted on Monday. We obviously had a very difficult weekend. So this goes out to all America's mayors and basically says that because there's these guidelines for opening up America again from the administration, sort of telling the mayors that they needed to make some adjustments here because by keeping things closed, it's impacting the economy, it's impacting all sorts of areas. So I thought, again, timing was particularly strange.
Yeah, the other thing that's interesting is there's this inference in the letter that most banks are closed, but most banks actually have continued to operate. They may have their lobbies closed, but their drive-throughs are open for retail activity. They continue to do commercial and mortgage lending and consumer lending, and we know that they participated actively in the PPP program. So it's not as if all the national banks locked up in March and went home.
No, exactly, and they do reference that banks need to make loans during this time, and if businesses are closed, that becomes problematic. But as we've just said, banks are operating, and many businesses are still operating. Obviously, it's an economic hit that we've never seen before, but I found that particularly interesting. I'd also say the letter just seems to be an amalgamation of different thought processes, and they don't seem to be that well connected. And I would just urge our community to read it. But I wanted to focus, as I know we've talked about this before, there's a section in here that I found particularly fascinating, to say the least, and that is the question of wearing face masks in public spaces. So obviously, that's something that many governors have either required or strongly recommended. It's in the CDC guidelines, in public spaces. The statement in the letter says, lengthy and potentially permanent requirements that individuals wear face masks in many or even all public spaces create the very real risk of increase in bank robberies. Really? So then they say, historically, banks have had policies prohibiting customers from wearing masks and certain head coverings in branches. True. I do recall in my years at the ABA that bank security officers talked about wanting to make sure banks were able to tell customers to take their hats off going into banks because of cameras and that sort of thing. And it was an issue for a few years. But what I found particularly, I would argue, disturbing about this is they say that many banks relaxed those, quote, prohibitions. And again, there weren't that many prohibitions. And now are concerned because of health and welfare of the customers that you wear masks. But here's where it gets something that we need to check on. Recent reports of face covering related robberies at bank branches make clear that broadly applicable face mask requirements are not safe or sustainable. You and I have checked with some of our law enforcement partners. Can't find any evidence of that. So that's more than problematic. I think what's important here is for our community to read this letter. And I would say one more thing. This is the first message from the acting comptroller. This is the first thing that he decides to make public or they decide to make public. Just let that sit for a bit.
John, when we post this conversation, we'll post the link to the letter so people don't have to dig around. And again, as you say, we urge everybody to take a look at it, just to try to make your own conclusions. It is an interesting collection of thoughts.
Yeah, and law enforcement has not yet posted on any of their websites about an increase in bank robberies. We will continue to monitor that and certainly update it as we get that information.
We also did not see a similar request or set of thoughts issued by either the FDIC or the Fed. And in these types of across the industry circumstances, oftentimes the three federal regulators work together.
Absolutely. Great point, Elliot. Everybody stay safe out there.
Yep. You too, John.